The wind howled through the giant trees of Erebanir, a planet far from any major colony. The endless forest stretched like a green ocean, its canopy so thick that sunlight broke through in silver ribbons. Somewhere in that vast wilderness stood a small wooden cabin, alone among the whispering leaves. Inside lived Jonas Hale, a man who preferred machines to people. Years ago, he had been an engineer for a frontier colony, but after a mining accident took his friends and no one was held responsible, Jonas left the settlements behind. He built his cabin in the woods, living quietly among his tools, drones, and the hum of his small generator. Each day, Jonas worked. He cut down old alien trees whose fibers were strong as steel, processed them into beams, and sent them by drone to nearby towns for credits. The rhythm of work filled his days. Silence filled his nights. He spoke to no one and liked it that way. But even a man who says he enjoys solitude sometimes listens too closely to the empty air. Some nights Jonas thought he heard faint voices outside, not of people but echoes of something moving in the forest. He always told himself it was just the wind. One evening, a storm rolled in fast. The sky turned green and violet as thunder cracked across the hills. Jonas checked his sensors. Strong winds, lightning, possible debris. He was about to lock down the shutters when an alert blinked on his console. Unidentified crash detected, 1 kilometer east. He frowned. The woods were thick and dangerous in a storm, but his instincts, buried under years of isolation, stirred. He grabbed his coat, flashlight, and rifle and went out into the rain. Lightning flashed, showing trees bending under the wind. Jonas pushed through wet leaves and mud until he reached a clearing. There, half buried in the soil, was a small transport pod, smoke rising from its side. Its hull bore marks of energy fire, a sign of attack. Cautiously, Jonas approached. Inside, he found a woman and 3 children, huddled together. The woman's arm was bleeding, and the youngest child, a girl of about 6, was crying softly. Jonas hesitated. He wasn't used to people anymore, and the thought of having 4 strangers in his cabin made his chest tighten. Still, leaving them here meant death. "Can you walk?" he asked the woman. She looked up at him, eyes full of fear but steady. "Yes, thank you." "Please, my children." He nodded and helped them out one by one. They were cold, soaked, and trembling. Jonas wrapped them in his cloak and guided them back through the forest, the storm roaring above like some angry god. When they reached his cabin, he quickly started the heater and handed out dry blankets. The woman introduced herself as Mara Kell. Her husband had died months earlier in a mining collapse on Vesta Outpost, and she had been traveling with her children to join a new colony when pirates attacked their convoy. Their escape pod was the only one to make it down. Jonas cleaned her wound and gave her water. The children, Eli, the eldest boy of 12, Rin, his quiet 10-year-old brother, and little Lyra, slowly stopped shaking once they felt the warmth of the fire. "You're safe here," Jonas said quietly. For the first time in years, his cabin was filled with voices, the sound of soft sobs, whispered comfort, and the crackling of flames. It felt strange. Days passed. The storm raged outside, making it impossible to travel. Jonas let them stay until it cleared. He showed the children how to feed the heater, fix the water filters, and use the drones. They followed him around, asking endless questions. "Why do the trees glow at night?" Rin asked once. "They store light from the suns," Jonas replied, smiling faintly. "Old survival trick." "The plants here are smarter than most people I know," the kids laughed. Even Jonas found himself chuckling softly. Mara helped where she could, cooking, cleaning, organizing supplies. Her calmness filled the cabin with warmth that Jonas had long forgotten. In the evenings, she told stories of Earth, of oceans, rain, and music. Jonas would listen in silence, pretending not to care. But her voice reminded him of a world he once dreamed of seeing. Slowly, the walls he had built around himself began to crack. But the forest outside was changing. Jonas's sensors began to pick up movement at night. Faint, almost human shapes drifting between the trees. His security drones sometimes failed to return. One morning he found deep tracks near the cabin, clawed and long like something part animal, part machine. He didn't tell Mara at first. He didn't want to scare her or the children. Instead, he checked his weapons, strengthened the door locks, and set up motion sensors around the perimeter. Yet every night the forest grew quieter, as if the woods themselves were holding their breath. One afternoon, while Jonas and Eli were repairing a drone outside, A distant roar echoed through the trees. The boy froze. What was that? Eli whispered. Something big, Jonas said, scanning the tree line. Back inside now. They hurried in and Jonas locked the door. His scanners flickered, a brief reading of heat signatures moving just beyond the range. Too fast. Too organized. That night, as the rain returned, Mara noticed Jonas sitting by the window, rifle across his lap. You think someone's out there? She asked softly. Not someone, Jonas murmured. Something. Despite the fear, life continued. The children began to adapt. Eli helped with the generator repairs. Rin learned to cook with limited supplies. Little Lyra drew pictures on scraps of paper, mostly of the big trees and Jonas's drones buzzing overhead. You look like you belong here, Mara told Jonas one morning. He smiled faintly. Maybe I do, but you don't. When the weather clears, I'll contact the colony outpost. They'll send a transport. Her face fell slightly. You want us to go? Jonas paused. It's safer for you. The forest isn't... A sharp noise cut him off, a metallic shriek from the tree line followed by silence. Jonas gripped his rifle. Stay inside, he said, his tone firm but calm. He went out into the misty clearing, flashlight sweeping the shadows. For a moment he saw nothing. Then, near the far edge, something moved. Tall, thin, with eyes that shimmered faint blue. It watched him, then melted back into the trees. Jonas returned to the cabin, locking the door. We're not alone out here, he said quietly. That night, sleep would not come. Jonas sat awake by the dying fire. He thought about the children upstairs, safe and dreaming, and about Mara's tired face as she tried to smile through fear. He had lived alone for years, believing that was strength. But now, with these strangers in his home, he felt something new. Responsibility. The forest outside might be alive and maybe even angry, but Jonas had already made a silent promise. He would not let it take them. As dawn came and mist filled the valley, Jonas stepped outside with his rifle and looked toward the horizon. Somewhere out there was a colony, civilization, and a way to send Mara and the children to safety. But part of him already knew, when that time came, letting them go would be harder than he ever imagined. Because for the first time since he came to this world, the silence of solitude was broken. And though danger waited in the shadows of Araban's forest, Jonas Hale was no longer just a lonely woodsman. He was something more, a protector, perhaps even a father figure, though he didn't yet realize it. Above the trees, the morning light touched the cabin roof, and far off in the woods, unseen eyes blinked once, twice, and vanished. The forest was waiting, and Jonas was ready. The morning sun rose over the endless forest, shining faintly through the mist. Jonas Hale stood outside his cabin, rifle in hand, scanning the tree line. He hadn't slept much. The strange shapes he had seen the night before still haunted him. Inside, Mara Kell was making tea from dried herbs. The children were quiet, sensing that something was wrong. The youngest, Lyra, clutched her toy drone close, while her brothers Eli and Rin helped check the tools and power lines. Jonas turned to them, trying to sound calm. We'll need to stay alert, he said. Something's been watching us. If it comes back, we'll be ready. Mara looked worried, but nodded. You think it's an animal? Jonas shook his head slowly. No, it's smarter than that. Strange signs. The days that followed were tense. Every night, the sensors caught motion, flickers of heat, shadows darting between the glowing trees. The drones Jonas sent to scout never returned. One morning, they found claw marks on the outer wall of the cabin, deep and burned at the edges. The tracks around it were heavy and strange, part metal, part flesh. It's like they're testing us, Jonas murmured. Eli stood beside him, trying to be brave. We can fight them, right? Jonas looked at the boy, then at his rifle. We'll try. That night, Jonas repaired the outer defenses, motion turrets, old energy barriers, and traps built from spare machinery. Eli helped, handing him tools, watching closely. Jonas was surprised by how quickly the boy learned. You ever build before? Jonas asked. My father used to let me help him, Eli said quietly. He said building things keeps your mind strong. Jonas smiled faintly. He was right. The storm returns on the fifth night. The wind rose again. Thunder rolled across the valley and the sky glowed with flashes of green lightning. Jonas stood by the console, checking the sensors again and again. "They're close," he said. "Too close." Mara tightened her grip on the metal bar she carried as a weapon. Then we faced them together. He looked at her, surprised. "You're not afraid?" "Of course I'm afraid," she said softly. "But my children are here. I'll do whatever I must." Jonas felt something tighten in his chest, respect and something more. He moved to the door and locked it. "All right, everyone inside, stay low. Whatever happens, don't go out unless I say so." The lights flickered. Outside, movement rippled through the mist. Then came the sound, a low, clicking growl, not human, not natural. Jonas steadied his rifle. The first shadow appeared at the edge of the clearing, tall and lean, its body made of both metal and sinew. Its eyes glowed faint blue. Then another stepped beside it. And another. "There are at least 6, Jonas whispered. "Maybe more." The first attack the creatures charged. The turrets opened fire, red light slicing through the rain. Sparks burst as one of the attackers fell, but the others leapt aside, moving with eerie grace. They hit the barrier, a faint shimmer of energy, and screamed as their bodies sparked. But the field faltered under their claws. Jonas shouted, "Eli, power cells, replace the red one." Eli ran to the console, trembling but determined. "Got it." The barrier flickered back to life just as another creature slammed into it. The flash lit the clearing like lightning. Inside the cabin, Mara held Lyra close, whispering softly to calm her. Rin crouched by the window, passing ammunition to Jonas. The boy's hands shook, but his eyes were steady. Jonas aimed and fired. One of the attackers fell, then another. But the rifle began to overheat and his generator started to fail. Suddenly, the power died. The cabin went dark. The night battle. The door shuddered under heavy blows. Jonas shouted, "Everyone down!" As he fired again, the muzzle flash lighting the room. A creature burst through the half-broken door, hissing. Its metallic limbs gleamed. Before it could reach Jonas, Mara swung her metal bar with surprising strength, striking it in the head. Sparks flew. The thing staggered back. Jonas fired once more, and it fell silent. "Good hit," he said quickly. Mara wiped sweat from her brow. "Don't thank me yet." Another crash. The window shattered. Jonas turned, shooting into the dark. Eli and Rin dragged the power cells from storage and worked together to reconnect them. "Red wire to the black port," Jonas shouted. "Done," Eli yelled. The lights came back on with a hum. The barrier reactivated just in time, forcing 2 more creatures back into the storm. Jonas sealed the door again. His heart pounded, but when he looked at Mara and the children, he saw not fear, but courage. They were fighting together. The discovery. When morning came, the storm had passed. The bodies of the fallen creatures lay scattered outside the cabin. Their skin was part metal, part living tissue, and their eyes still faintly glowed even in death. Jonas examined one carefully. A small marking on its neck caught his eye, the symbol of the first settlers of Ereban 4. His brow furrowed. "They were human-made," he said quietly. "Old colony biomechs. But they've changed. Adapted." Mara knelt beside him. "You mean someone made them?" "Not anymore," Jonas said. "Whatever created them is gone. They've been evolving on their own. The forest AI must have reactivated them." He pointed toward the glowing trees. "The forest isn't just alive, it's protecting itself, and it sees us as a threat." Eli's face went pale. "Then it will keep coming." Jonas nodded. "Unless we stop it." Preparing for the final stand, the next 2 days were spent building. Jonas showed the children how to use old metal parts and drones to create traps, barricades, and a powerful signal booster. "If we can overload the old forest network," Jonas explained, "we might shut down the creatures." Rin looked up from the cables. "And if we can't?" Jonas gave a small, grim smile. "Then we fight." The children worked hard. Eli learned to operate the drone cannons. Rin programmed motion sensors, Even little Lyra carried tools and offered help. Mara stood beside Jonas as they finished wiring the last power cell. "You could have left us," she said softly. "But you didn't." Jonas looked out at the forest, glowing faintly under the twin moons. "I've been running from people for a long time. Maybe it's time I stopped." The final attack. That night, the forest moved again. This time there were more of them. Dozens. Their glowing eyes surrounded the clearing. The ground trembled as they approached. Jonas stood at the door with his rifle. "Stay together," he said. The creatures charged. The traps exploded, sending fire and sparks into the mist. The drone cannons roared, guided by Eli's steady hands. Mara and Rin kept the power flowing, while Lyra hid near the corner, whispering prayers to her toy drone. Jonas moved from window to window, firing until his rifle burned hot. One creature broke through the side wall. Mara struck it down with her bar, yelling, "For my children!" The booster hummed louder and louder as the network overloaded. Lightning-like energy spread through the ground, up the trees, into the creatures themselves. They screamed, a sound of static and pain, and then silence fell. The lights flickered once, then steadied. The forest went still. Jonas lowered his rifle. Smoke drifted through the clearing. The creatures lay still, their eyes dark. Mara slowly approached him. "Is it over?" He nodded. "For now." The AI shut down. "It's gone quiet." A new dawn. Days later, the colony patrol arrived, answering the distress beacon Jonas had sent. They offered to take Mara and the children to the main city, but when the time came, Jonas hesitated. He stood by the cabin as the transport waited, his heart heavy. Mara stepped toward him. "You could come with us," she said softly. Jonas looked at her and the children, the family he had found in the heart of the wilderness. "No," he said. "This place still needs watching. The forest isn't done with us yet." Eli hugged him tightly. "You'll visit?" Jonas smiled. "Count on it." The transport rose into the sky, its engines echoing across the trees. Jonas watched until it vanished, then turned back to the cabin. The forest was quiet again, peaceful. He looked around and felt something new in the silence. Not loneliness, but warmth. The woods no longer felt empty, because in his heart, Jonas Hale was no longer just a lonely woodsman. He was a guardian, and he had a family waiting for him, forever. The wind blew softly through the trees, and the world of Erebus seemed to whisper his name.